Hello, this is Galaxy Burn, the only Warhammer 40k podcast ever. We're on our third episode, and I've got a guest with me who I've worked with before on previous podcasts, and whose kind of work I've admired for many years. Unfortunately, well, this kind of ties into what we're going to talk about. He does not have a functional webcam. Hello, Sean. I guarantee he's there. He really is.
Hello, Gareth.
Hello.
I would say although I am tempted to try and get the webcam working, it took us. We're a full half hour late to starting this because of how long it took my computer to do a series of arbitrary, unnecessary updates. So I'm not going to risk it just because of that. And also, I am, to be frank, fairly hungover and absolutely not looking my best at the moment. And I am a very, very, very vain, proud man. So you're just going to have to I don't know. Yeah, picture one of my more flattering selfies that I've posted recently. That's how I look.
Yeah, he's on Instagram, folks. And kind of part of the reason I'm doing this video as well as audio podcasting is I wanted to have a reason to take more care of my appearance, and this ghoul is the result. I got this horrible spot on my nose as well. It's gonna grow to a witch wart. But yeah, it gives me a reason to wear a blazer on a weekend.
Yeah. So I like the shirt you've got on, actually.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's like Primark. It's nothing, but I bought it for an office Hawaiian barbecue many years ago, and I finally have a reason to wear it.
Yes, I'm a fan of florals. This is a Warhammer podcast. I'm a fan of floral design. I have some paisleys I'm very, very keen on, but normally only get broken out for church. So there we go. All I have not all I have on. That would be a different situation. But what I have on today rather is my Hauntology T-shirt, which the lovely comrades at Acid Horizon sent me some years ago when I went on there. So yes, you'd certainly be out to look maxing me if we were camera ready.
I should go get my Guattari t-shirt on that Acid Horizon gave me. Just dropping I was also a guest. But yeah, folks, if you like theory with a capital T, go listen to Acid Horizon. It is very good, actually. And shout out to one of them who told me about the recording software that I'm currently using. So we're going to talk about space robots.
Specifically, we're talking about space skeleton robots, or would that be skeleton space robots?
Yeah, space so I'm going to issue a content warning up ahead. Skeletons are quite spooky, so if you are going to be spooked by skeletons, it's probably a good idea to leave the podcast now.
We've also, it occurs to me, sort of we're recording this right on the tail end of September, so we are just lurching into that spookiest of months, into Spooktober itself. So I think it's actually quite apt that we're talking about ancient Egyptian space skeleton robots from beyond the depths of time.
Spoopy, even. Love that term. It's a good term I use often. And I'm on reddit.com. So the last episode, it's kind of like a little mini Necron season, because the last episode was about The Infinite and the Divine, which is the greatest and best 40k novel. We didn't really have a chance to go into what the Necrons' deal is. We alluded to it. They are spooky space skeletons. They have an ancient Egyptian theme. They do not have souls. They would like to have their souls back if possible. Well, some of them do. They have various cultural-specific mental illnesses, if you're into those. Some of them want to wipe out all organic life in the galaxy. That's where they get the Destroyer virus. Some of them take people's skin off and put it on themselves. That's the Flayed Ones virus. But some of them are autistic gay old men who have multi-millennial feuds between themselves. That's Orican and Traston. And Yeah. So Sean, you are a fan of these guys, right? I think it's fair to say.
Yes, yes. So when I was a lad, when I was yeah, so when I got into Warhammer when I was a kid, the Necrons were my guys. They were my spooky guys. They were the ones I was immediately drawn to. I can remember the first time seeing the Necron, that Necron art, the original, the art of the what was supposed to be the second edition codex, and they there was something and obviously I was like 10, 11, 12 or something, so yeah, but so there was something so immediately and deeply enigmatic about sort of like these hunched, dark, looming metallic figures kind of stepping through this like emerald mist, looking dead straight at you. That just I was immediately like, those are the coolest. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And like, I mean, it's that there's that meme, isn't there? Sort of like, at school, everyone's either an ancient Egypt kid, an ancient Greece kid, an ancient Rome kid, and I was an ancient Egypt kid. They were always my boys. So yeah, there was a lot of like arbitrary little like confluences there, I guess, that led to me sort of like asking for a box of Necron Warriors, please, Mum. The yes, and I stuck with them for a very long time. I stuck with them for a very long time. I was never one of those. I was never especially into the game. That was always something that I would only very very occasionally do, but it was always about the models, and in particular just about the endless obsessing with the lore, and the yeah. So in terms of like my actual sort of like deep kind of involvement with the hobby, so like for a long time now, for the rest of my whole adult life, I've been very much sort of like a passive distance observer, still like a frequent like observer, but still like very much like from afar, just occasionally like dipping in to see what the new developments are with with again, just with the lore, with the story, with the backstory of it all, because it is so very 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 compelling and very 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 fun and very very silly. So my so a lot of my specific sort of like memories and a lot of the specifics I think that drew me to the Necrons were very very much of that time. We're talking about sort of like the Necrons of the 2000s, and I think they're an interesting sort of case study in how the as a franchise, as a product, as something, how Warhammer has changed in that time, as it has kind of moved more into the cultural mainstream, as it's become more of a hot commercial property, because precisely because of this. I mean, when I was into it as a kid, you couldn't have a Necron novel because the whole thing with them is they don't have any personalities. They don't have character. That was the whole thing with them. The Necrons and the Tyranids. They are like they are the two just implacable force of nature armies. There wasn't anything you could point to in terms of having like a character, personality, individuality would be kind of it'd be missing the point altogether. The Tyranids being obviously it's like pure sort of biological hunger, and the Necrons being this kind of thanotic, inorganic, but still in a sense actually like a carnivorous force, because this is the thing, what they do, and again this is I'm not too hot on what the current law is, to be honest, but what their whole thing was, they are harvesting the life of the galaxy for their own ends, because they want to scour it and clean it for themselves. But there was also this sense, what happens when you're Gauss Blade is they have like ripped you into a kind of base energy for themselves. I think that was kind of, at least that was, I think that was at least one of the implications of what it was they were doing.
Yeah, so I've been reading up on their early lore here, and they are just mindless slaves. They're just basically Terminators. They just walk across the landscape shooting people until everything is dead. And the reason they did that, they So this is how the law was back in 2002, which was they, much like today, they were originally biological race called the Necrontia. They had very short lives because their planet had a cancerous sun that killed them when they were like in their 30s. They met a group of star gods called the Catan, and they offered them immortality through being transferred into these metal bodies, a metal called necrodermis, because it's got to be edgy and necro. That made them the Catan's slaves, and they would walk around the galaxy killing everything they could kill. They did that like 60 million years ago. They killed everyone except them. Then they went into a long sleep and came back and started killing again. And they were kind of introduced to the law in a scenario called something like Outpost 101, which so they were originally fighting the sister of the battle. This is in early edition of White Dwarf, and they were at the time simply just mindless robots, like you say, just like kind of Tyranids with this like overabundance of life. They are the complete opposite. All is simple: eradicate all life within the galaxy. To the Necrons, death is the ultimate peace. And that's been completely altered by the new edition. From probably like third or fourth edition onwards, they completely retconned that whole thing. Now the Necrons rebelled against the Catan. They used bits of the Catan as like weapons and power sources. They don't serve them at all. They are the whole ancient Egyptian dynasty thing came in. They're not against, apart from the destroyer cult, they're not against life in any way. Some of them, like Orican, want to be alive again. But the whole thing about being transferred into these metal bodies has meant that they have minds. They're often very intelligent. They have bodies that can't die, but they don't have souls. And that's like a big thing in the 40k world, because without a soul, I think you want to kind of pick up on that whole soullessness aspect.
Yes, yeah, because this is something that has been present in the lore, I think, since not quite the off with the Sisters of Battle thing in White Dwarf, but since like the earliest kind of like properly systematized version of the Necrons, the Necrons don't have access to the warp because they do not have souls. They do not have a psychic presence. And what this means is that all of their technology is kind of based on, it's kind of just like torturing of matter and physics almost, right? Because the thing with the because obviously the way that all of the other sort of like powers in the 40k universe, with the exception of the Tau, who actually have this problem in common, but they kind of imply they do not have psychic abilities either. They do not have an awareness of the warp.
Super low level.
Yeah, it's this obviously they could, everyone else gets through, travels throughout the galaxy through the warp, but Necron literally can't do that because they do not have access to it. This is something that is kind of denied to them because of, and this isn't as a result of of their mental or their transfer to the necrodermis bodies. I think maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that's something they've never been able to do that. So they are kind of trapped in the material universe in the way that no one else is. The Eldar obviously, pardon me, the Eldari obviously aren't. Humanity isn't, and so on, because we have this kind of almost fuller being, because we have acts, because we all, every soul is a light in the warp, and the Necron do not have that. I think maybe they did I think maybe they did, maybe before the transfer into the Necrodermis bodies. I actually cannot remember that now.
It's never really mentioned in the lore. I mean, I assume they did just because they were biological, but there's never mention of any being psychic or doing any warp stuff or meeting demons and stuff. If they did, maybe it was like a low level version like the Tau.
Yeah, because again, one of the features in the original lore, and I imagine it's still probably in no, I think it is actually, because I didn't get around to reading the Infinite and Divine, because I'm having a little bit of a time with things at the moment. But I know that like, the War in Heaven is still a feature of the lore, and that's kind of like the foundational event for the Necrons was the war with the Old Ones, who are the primogenitor of the different races of the galaxy, and again going back to like the editions of like the 2000s, and they like the Necrontyr are like the most advanced race in the galaxy after their creators, the Old Ones, and they go to war with them. For I don't know, it's Warhammer. You don't need any reason for going to war. Your creator got to you. But the and they discover the Catan, the star gods. They discover one of the Catan feeding off of their sun, I think is what it is, and they realize that this could be the turning point. This is what they could use to win this endless war, and obviously like the victory, as every victory is in Warhammer, is a Pyrrhic victory because they attain immortality, but at the expense of personality and individuality. And I think there was like little things in there that some of the Necron lords have retained some elements of distinctiveness and some elements of personality, but that's it, and that's like barely. So this is the thing. This is what I mean in terms of the hobby changing as or the lore, or becoming more accessible, a bit friendlier as Warhammer becomes more established as a proper commercial property, because you can do more if they're guys, if they're cantankerous old gay men in robot bodies. You can write a book, and you can sell a book about that in the way that you just can't with what it was beforehand, unless it's just about a horror story about fighting them, which is perfectly good, obviously. So that is part of it, and I'm not saying that's wrong or bad even. I'm not saying that because of woke we can't have the good Necrons anymore, anything like that. But that is obviously part of the motivation for sort of like expanding them, as like expanding what the range is and what you can do with them and who they are, to give them a bit more literally more personality, a bit more distinctiveness. And again, I'm not saying that's bad, I'm not saying it's better or worse. It's just, but that is one of the reasons to do that, is because you get more. There's more there. But I mean, obviously, I do still think what made the Necrons really frightening was this notion there is just this kind of implacableness to them, and that they are just the pawns of the star gods. And again, the star gods are such an interesting idea as well, because they are not the gods of chaos. They are just these pure energetic consciousnesses that exist in our universe, and again, they do not have access to the warp. This is something that is beyond them, so that's denied to them. And yeah, because a lot of their technology, the Necron's technology, involves again, like with the manipulation of the laws of physics, the violation of the laws of physics, because the tearing open of pockets of the universe to fill with things and to do things with, but it's still something thanotic about it, right? There's still something very, very deathly about this, because they cannot have the access to the pure vitalism, which is the warp, right? That's why chaos is always cool, ultimately, right? Sort of like it is a kind of pure fecundity, right? It's this purely, I mean, which is why it's also insanity and madness and indeed chaos, because it is just a pure becomingness, a pure vitalism, and that the Necrons do not have that. It's just this constant, almost like falling back onto themselves, onto matter, and a loathing of their materiality and their and the fact, I mean, well, the warp is called the immaterial, that they cannot access the immateriality that in the 40k universe, every human being takes for granted. That is something that everybody, in a sense, has. That's why anyone can, like, say, pray to the emperor, and it will have a certain kind of like efficacy to it, because we're all tuned into it.
Or the orcs, who can literally manipulate reality just by believing that red cars go faster and things
Indeed.
like that. One of the recent developments in Necron lore, let's point out, is stuff called Blackstone. So a lot of their technology is based on this material called Blackstone, and that basically cancels out chaos in an area around it. So if you get a big pillar of Blackstone, then demons won't be able to go anywhere near it. Psychics will start bleeding out all of their orifices. But what it also does, which kind of links into what you're talking about with their like kind of aggressive materiality, is ordinary humans and Eldar, and anything with psychology, if they're around Blackstone for long enough, they'll start becoming suicidal. They'll become horribly depressed, and eventually they'll become catatonic. Like their whole planets have just stopped moving because they were exposed. They dug up a monument, and everyone on the planet just went like full 90s Radiohead and all at once. We're talking exit music for a film. It's as if the Necrons are so material that anything lifelike, including emotions, is just anathema to them. That it just like around them, like things like fear, joy, happiness, just all die, which is very 40k. That a big rock can make you kill yourself.
But am I right in thinking that the pylons are on Kadir, were those Blackstone?
Yeah,
because
those were they kind of it's one of those things where they kind of like have to fudge the lore a little bit. So if you were like holding a big rock of Blackstone, you'd go fully catatonic. Apparently, if an entire planet just lives around giant ones all the time, then they're fine. It's a bit, they have to kind of a bit mess around with the lore there. But yeah, the Cadian pylons with Blackstone. There's a great book called The Fall of Cadia, where Trazyn is trying to turn on the pylons because there's demons coming out of everyone everywhere. It's a big like whole thing, and and like the current like tip top bit of the lore is various factions in the galaxy trying to turn on the pylons again. That are scattered around the galaxy, or build their own ones, or exploit this Blackstone stuff as a resource, or stop people from doing that. If you're a Necron, if you're Chaos, for example, because Chaos have kind of had it too good for too long, been real high on hog since they cut the galaxy in half, killed trillions of people, and this whole Blackstone arc is potentially could end with them, getting a bit of a bloody nose. But we'll see, because it is 40k again, so they can't really progress the lore too much, because then something might actually happen that's permanent, and that can't happen. So that's kind of where the lore is, and it's been very Necron centric at the moment. They've really been the 10th edition had Necrons in the box. I've got all of them downstairs, or painted in various stages of painting, because you just got them in the 10th edition box alongside some regular Space Marines. And they've been very much more important than they have been in previous years, because there's Blackstone stuff, and because of how vital it is to the galaxy getting back together. It's been, and that has resulted in what you were talking about earlier, which is that Necron characters are getting a lot more play. People like understanding them and liking them a lot more than usual. And yeah, I can't tell you how much that's ended up with people actually sitting down and making these armies, but it's probably resulted in an uptick of people wanting to get into Necrons, and which is a good thing because they're pain in the ass to make, some of them, but they're a very interesting faction visually. I think that like feeling you got when you were 10 years old looking at them, it's only going to be massively amplified now that they're so cool looking. The early Necrons, they looked like ass. They were terrible. I don't know how anyone, even a 10-year-old, could look at them and think that was cool. But especially with those little plastic bits you put in them, the little like
the little the transparent green tubes. Yeah, they were the coolest bit actually.
They look so like Lego. I remember there was a Lego sets when I was a kid that had those. And yeah, that turned me off Necrons for a long time. Just those little plastic bits. And the obelisk, the original version
monolith,
of that. Monolith. Yeah, that looked awful. That looked like a toy. Yes, I know it was technically a toy. It's a wargaming miniature actually. But yeah, that looked so cheap. I'm sure it was very expensive, but the original Necron monolith was, yeah, it looked like He-Man was going to bust out of it.
Oh, I liked all of these things. I disagree. But yeah, I do remember actually. So I do remember like wishing the monolith did have like a cannon on it, though, right? Because
it looks like you could press something down, a little dart will go out like 3 feet. Then it'll go in your sister's eye and you'll get told off.
I will say with the Necrons in I think it's Dark Crusaders, the Dawn of War expansion that they're in. They are, although they are like, sort of, they're kind of probably, like fairly boring, I guess, kind of like in retrospect, but they have like the vibe and the look of them, and just sound of them like is just so cool. It's and does genuinely make them like, because I know what you mean, what you're saying there, but so did actually do a really good job of like finding what was menacing in the design there, like how, especially just the fact, like there are things that are quite frustrating obviously playing them, because just like the warriors move very very slowly and so on, but when you watching them just that on the battlefield when you play the Dawn of War, that was actually, you got to the point where no, this is actually what's really fucking cool about them, the fact that there is just this they don't need to run, they don't need to be fast, and they made really cool noises, like the destroyers made very very cool noises, and what was fun as well is the monolith was the because with Dawn of War, you upgrade your base over the course of like a campaign to get unlock more and more. And what you're doing as a Necrons is you're slowly turning on all of the systems in a buried monolith. So it slowly rises further out of the ground, like more bits of its systems turn on, until eventually just becomes a full-on monolith which can teleport and so on. Again, the vote just moves like agonizingly slowly. Once anything gets near it, it just immediately starts just obliterating it with its particle whip and so on. It's just like it becomes just, again, like it takes a long time for them to get going, but then there is this genuine like implacable mechanical force thing to them once they start rolling in this computer game from the past. And in terms of what I remember, like when it comes to the breadcrumbs they were seeding when I was a teenager, like with the Necrons, with the lore, is it felt like what they were setting the Necrons up to be was like they are going to be like the big bad, rather than chaos, because again, like the slow because I think if I I should have done literally any preparation at all. I think one of the things they were setting up even was the implication that the machine god was one of the Catan.
Yeah, that's been basically confirmed now. That the Emperor just found a Catan like a full Catan, not a piece, like a shard that you play on the tabletop. Corralled it, stuck it under Mars, and all the Martian technology that's like a psychic, like bubbling up from this void dragon that's underneath Mars.
Yes, the Void Dragon.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, you're asked to Mars, yeah, that's another great thing that the Emperor has done to make life better for everyone. So the so the Mechanicum are very kind of heavily influenced by this technology, and like everything that they do is a reflection of basically what the Void Dragon wants, and it's kind of like semi-dormant, and it's kind of like, you know, Lovecraftian thing where it's sleeping, but its dreams affect the waking world. So yeah, that's one of those things where, oh, it's really fucking cool, but we can't actually do anything with that plot point because that would like ruin one or maybe more entire factions forever if like the Void Dragon wakes up.
Yes, I mean, when I first walked back into a Games Workshop for the first time, like a very, very long time, which would have been in like 2017, 2018, I think it was, with some friends from my master's degree, and just felt of like old timestakes. We thought, oh, we were all into this as kids. Let's see what's going on. And I was astonished to discover that something had happened, you know, because this was how I've discovered about, you know, was Basicatrix Maledictum, the split of the Imperium, because the Eye of Terror has finally opened and so on. Just discovered, oh, so things have happened. Incredible. Was such a weird.
That's been like the one thing that's happened.
It is the one thing.
40 years, but yeah, it's a hell of a thing. But it is the one thing that's actually happened.
Yeah, I mean, this was because the Horus Heresy books have been going on for it's 20 years now, right?
Yeah, 2006.
2006, yes, because I remember getting like the first three books the one and only time I went to Games Day, when I was a kid, and just how so I'm losing the thread of the point I was going to make. Yeah, because the thing with the Horus Heresy books, one of the reasons it's become such a ongoing concern for so long, because it was meant to be like 3 books, that was it, or something like that, right? Is because it allowed things to happen, but in a way which did not disrupt any of the current intellectual property, because these are all things that have already happened. So as long as the conclusion still occurs, and then it's fine for the like the background to just ever expand, which is what's happened. And the last one of those books I read was the first Heretic, but I have like been kept up to date by friends of mine who have read it, and again, sort of checking things out myself and so on. And this is kind of like, it has given them sort of like an outlet for the happening of things without this disrupting what they're doing in the without disrupting what's going on now, I guess. Back to the Necrons. There was this, and that was again one of the things I found really exciting about them, was this implication that they're kind of like, well, because there's something. They are a death even more like deathly than anything chaos can do, because this is the thing, sort of like you don't die in a certain sense, if you in 40k Salter, because you are, because we possess souls, and we sort of like so we have, there is still like a kind of like a thing, like a permanence to a person, I guess, but sort of like but the Necrons represent just sort of like such a total death, something totally thanotic, that's something genuinely very, very frightening about them, because there's nothing of nothing fun or glorious about that, but it is just the onward march of death. It's in, like, if we want to talk about Beyond the Pleasure Principle by Sigmund Freud, which I'm certain we want to do. I remember one of the things that struck me reading that was the notion of death drive being a kind of, it manifests itself in repetitive actions, because repetitive actions are attempts to escape back into the past, into greater degrees of safety because of the past is a safer territory than the present because the past is understood and there's all the code and so on. But what the deathliness of this, why this has to lead to death, is because ultimately the ultimate return, with a V, the ultimate return is to the inorganic state from which we all came when we did not exist, when we were matter without inanimate matter, literally. This, so the journey backwards into the past has to lead to in death, in a kind of paradoxical way, so to speak. And the Necrons being represent a kind of represents that very interestingly, in that, well, for a start, they're spooky skeletons, obviously, but also the fact that they are totally inorganic, and they are this emergence out of deep time, a kind of manifestation of the ancientness of death itself, of the fact that death is an inescapable condition of existence, and the fact that they are, as a culture, before the discovery of the star gods, before the transference into living metal, they were a culture that was obsessed with death and obsessed with their past, and trying to, the whole thing they're doing is trying to turn the clock back to when they dominated the galaxy. So they do kind of represent this kind of like the deathliness of the desire to return with a V. There's because this can only lead, because the ultimate return is simply to go back into the state prior to our own birth, which is identical with death. So yeah, the Necrons would have voted for Brexit. The Necrons are indeed Brexit, the great death that stalks us all.
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading, I think it may have been in the Infinite Divine, like some of the Necrons fully are like trying to return with a V to how they were, and that's pretty common in their culture, is just trying to just repeat the same things they had when they were biological. But there's a few of them who have kind of embraced the fact that they are robots now. They don't have to have two legs, two arms, and a head. They can be whatever they want to be. And some of them even have become non-binary because they're robots. They don't have a sex. You don't need he or she, a robot. So some of them get referred to with they them pronouns now. And I think that the chuds haven't clocked onto that yet. That some of them and some of the Mechanicus are also don't have genders, like literally got nothing down there. So they use that sort of they thems now. And,
so it has literally gone woke.
Yeah.
So this, so we
woke DEI. BlackRock has made Necrons have they them pronouns now because of woke DEI. It's a real thing, I believe, as an adult. I'm going to make 14 videos today just about that. They're all going to be an hour long, and it'll be about how Henry Cavill is destroying Amazon woke DEI. Again, I'm a grown-up. Sorry, where were we?
Where were we? But yeah, that's fun. But that's actually that's actually doing something interesting. So yes, we do actually applaud. I mean, this is the thing with speaking of the hobby more generally. The hobby, what the hell? I also
hobby, capital letters.
I'm a man in my 30s. I'm tired. I work full time. I always want to be asleep. What the hell am I doing here? Anyway,
talking about space robots.
Let's talk about space robots. Yeah. So one of this is the thing. One of the redeeming things about Warhammer, what has prevented it becoming entirely toxified, was the fact that just sort of like women and queer people all got into it en masse spontaneously. The force that keeps it going.
Same for most genres of metal. Same with virtually everything. Video games. It's just been queer folks who have been doing everything interesting for the last 20 years.
But yeah, I mean, if you want to I'm feeling a bit saucy now. Like, if you want to kind of double down on the thenotic point, sort of about the Necrons, talk about, I suppose, really, you could argue that the Necrons are indeed queer, Right, because if we follow from my close personal friend Lee Edelman's analyses of based on the Lacanian thought and the Lacanian notion of the real, which Lacan identifies, I believe, with the death drive, right, and that in Edelman's theoretical apparatus, as described in No Future, the queer represents the kind of the monstrousness of the real, because queerness is non-productive, non-generative in its sexual in its sexual dimensions, right? So in a sense, this is like we already mentioned, sort of like we've got now we've got gay Necrons, we've got non-binary Necrons, but even all the way back in the past, the pure in the 2000s, right? Like the purest understanding of the Necrons would have been that they are queer coded. I'm sorry, because that is death drive properly understood is the arrival of the queer real, right?
Yeah, I mean they are
quite shocking, sir.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the viewing figures, and they've gone to 0 the minute you started mentioning Lacan and queer theory. But anyway, what I was going to say is they are against the original 2002 Necrons are against life. They're against breeding, families. I mean, the current ones, they're in dynasties, which are families, but they can't.
What is a dynasty if not the logic of the polycule written with the language of time?
Okay, we can't mention polycules on every episode. People are going to get wrong ideas. In my case, right idea. But yeah, where was I going with this? They have. Yeah, they've freed themselves from breeding at the moment. And sexuality, pleasure in general, and now they have to. It's kind of why I thought I didn't really talk about this on the last episode, but The Infinite Divine is a kind of very queer book. It is about like 2 older gay men, and who have just kind of like got over the point where they can go out and go partying, so they get into weird little hobbies. And Trazen's hobby is collecting things. He just likes collecting everything he could find, and because they have no libido apart from that. They have no way of having any sort of pleasure. They can't make anything new because once a Necron dies, they die forever. They can't breed. They can't make new Necrons. They're limited to the ones they have. And if they die, then they're gone forever. So they they can't do anything but like seek pleasure. And that's kind of like the thing that straight people are so terrified by gay people, is that they just get to party all the time. They don't have to like take the kids to school. They're not responsible for the future. They just get to have fun. And I did another episode about vampires in 40k, like blood angels, and how the vampire myth is kind of society being afraid of aristocrats who just get a party all day. They don't need to make anything. They don't need to plow fields to make money. They're kind of beyond life and capitalism, and that's kind of the vampire myth, right? But the Necrons have the same thing. They're not alive, so they're kind of free in a way that living things aren't. They don't have to think about their future at all. They can just think about the fun stuff in their past. And Trazen, for himself, he just gets to have fun all day. He's probably the only good character because he's just having a laugh in the way a profoundly autistic robot can.
I suppose again, sort of like thinking about this further. One of the I'm thinking about the sense that queer people have to go through sort of like quite pronounced processes of self-creation, and cultivation as well. And the in being a gay autistic space robot from Space Egypt, devoting your existence to just the collecting of things, right? Isn't the point of that, right? A demonstration of how impeccable my taste is. And that is something that, taste isn't something you're born with. Taste is something you cultivate, something that you take time to learn about and take time to, because I did read some of it, the whole thing, he puts thought into how he displays this shit, right? Because that's,
Oh yeah.
that's again, it's a sign of refinement, right? And I think this is, why and obviously, in terms of queerness and in terms of the class politics of queerness, in particularly how gay men have tended to be represented, sort of like as effete, as genteel, as posh, right?
Yeah.
Is a lot of that option
kind of deal.
Sorry, what?
Like in like the Birdcage or something like that. Like these upper middle class guys who can just have beautiful apartments, dress impeccably all day.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And because of the and that's something that isn't available. Obviously, it isn't something that's actually available to a lot of queer people or gay men, because shit costs money, right? This is and also why talking about how that the vampire being kind of like born out of a kind of recognition of this kind of dead capital not needing to labor or to plow the land, right? Sort of a sense, one of the, sort of like a view, a reactionary view of like upper class decadence often assumed like the homosexuality of the upper class is kind of, as it was in a way that's kind of related to that, right? Because of the fact, the fact that sort of like being able to invest time in, again, like refinement of the development of taste, and like spunking all your money building a beautiful like medieval folly in your back garden, those are things that are perceived as having a kind of like dandyishness to them. And these things, I don't really have a point here, but these things do kind of like feed into each other, right? Because we associate these things with a kind of effeteness which we associate with queerness and so on. So that's what one of my pet theories, at least, about sort of the homophobia in sort of the some earlier manifestations of the communist and socialist movement being related to that, this notion of sort of like, well, that this is a decadence because we see it displayed in our class enemies, right? This is a podcast about space robots.
Class enemies. No, I see what you mean. The Necrons, gay.
Yes, that is the headline.
The episode title. I won't get any weird emails about it. The people who make 14 videos a day about woke DEI in Warhammer will say, okay, that's that guy's opinion. He's perfectly allowed to have that. So I'm glad that I'm going to get just some very hinged emails as opposed to unhinged emails.
Yeah, but it's nice they take the time to be so thoughtful, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and to see things. We don't always have to agree. The world doesn't march to just the beat of just one drum. What may be right for you may not be right for some.
Exactly.
There's a being tuned to different strokes for some reason there. But yes, so I think we can, having established the sexuality of the Necron dynasties, I think we can leave it there and consider this a job well done.
I quite agree, not least because I do not have my internet connection is playing up, and you are turning more and more into pixels and blurs on my screen, so I'm starting to get a little bit worried. This might all go horribly wrong with Liz. Anyway, but yes, so we have I hope this is something that a format that we can continue into the future about what are the sexual orientations of all of the factions in 40k. Space Marines, are they gay?
Yeah, they're stone butch. So yeah, I mean, also toys. So I think they are all actually queer because they're like living toys, like in Toy Story. That's a free other day. But Sean, where can people find you online and find your work and find Wyrd Signal and stuff?
So yes, Wyrd Signal, the podcast, but all things eerie, weird, and hauntological is well, I suppose much like the Necrons is dormant, but you can still dig it up and enjoyed the madness thereof. Yes, so I have a podcast called Wyrd Signal, which I do with the wonderful friend Lucy, about horror movies and theory. I don't think we've done anything at all this year because everybody's in their 30s now. But that is on Twitter. I think that's just at Wyrd Signal Pod, all one word, but Wyrd spelled WYRD. You'll also be able to find it if you just search Wyrd Signal Podcast on Google or whatever. You can find us at all the usual places. You can actually listen to my interview with the queer theorist I mentioned, Lee Edelman, from last year. He was a really, really fun and interesting guy.
Was that I'm pretty sure that was the guy who talked about like creating the idea of the child as a counterpoint to like decadence and depravity and
the monstrous fascism of the child. Yes,
monstrous fascism of the child. Yeah.
So please, actually, I'll say about if you actually dropping kayfabe a little bit. So if you are actually interested in that stuff about the relationship between queerness and Thanatos and this being understood as being something kind of like actually kind of cool, and they hate us for it. Check out that episode. I talked to a really, really cool guy, Lee Edelman, and his the book where his most famous book is called No Future, which I think came out in the early 2000s, and is about such things. So there you go. You can find me on Twitter at Hauntonaut. I'm still slightly amazed I managed to get that handle. Where occasionally I post mostly about the awful state of affairs in the world and in the Church of England. So there you go. I'm an exception. I'm afraid this is the thing, sort of like, although I'm not an old, not old game, only 31, but like I have kind of like speed run my way into Cantankerous old game, man, very, very quickly, just because of the because of the autism, really. Let's be honest here. So yes, so if you're interested in sort of like my interested in anything at all like that, please follow me on Twitter, I guess. Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this since you reached out.
No problem.
It was really good fun.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Folks at home, if you haven't read Infinite and Divine yet, please do so. Definitely check out Sean's podcast. There's a whole thing on America, like a whole series of stuff on weirdness in America, stuff like White Zombie, for example, best band of all time. And it's just a generally brilliant podcast. So we're going to be coming back next week, and there should be another pod that's just me talking, that's going to be about vampires, and it's going to cover a little bit of similar stuff, but in a fun way. I'll see you guys around. Goodbye.
Goodbye.